meet here regularly, so I will not be so presumptuous as assume you came to hear me. I'm looking around the table, pretty good looking breakfast, I get it. I've heard me speak and I've had good breakfast, and believe me, the good breakfast is always better. Well, first of all, I want to say what Kim said was very true. When I was elected and became Lieutenant Governor of Arkansas, I got down to the office that I was supposed to occupy, and the door was nailed shut. And I know that sounds like an apocryphal story, but it was actually literally true. The full story is that Webb Hubbell, who was Hillary Clinton's law partner, and at the time working in the White House with the Clintons, had sent word back to the Capitol that since this guy got elected, and really embarrassed the Clintons because there was no way that a Republican was supposed to be elected, since one hadn't been in 25 years. And in 150 years, only 3 had been elected statewide in the whole 150 years. And this was the first year of Clinton's presidency, and the last thing they needed was a Republican winning in a state where Republicans never got above 36 or 37% of the vote. Webb Hubbell sent the order down, make him feel welcome. So they did. They held the door shut. And 59 days later, the nails came out of the door. 59 days. And by then, all the office furniture had been removed, all the equipment, and the office budget had been zeroed out. It was quite a welcome to the world of Bill and Hillary Clinton politics. So last night, I'm sure many of you watched the debate. And the best thing was that there were actually 2 debates. One were the Democrats debating one another, and the other was Hillary debating herself. Because Hillary has taken both sides of almost all those issues, and therefore she was able to debate both sides of the Hillary Clinton that I know all too well. And folks, we saw last night that if anybody thinks that Hillary Clinton is going to be an easy target, well, they just don't understand what it's like to play ball against the Clintons. I do. Because every election I was ever involved in was an election where I fought the Clinton political machine. I fought it repeatedly. I defeated it consistently. Most importantly, I live to tell about it. Well, one of the things that was very evident last night is that there's going to be a stark contrast in the election between the Democrats and the Republicans. And I would just simply say to you that I was really encouraged last night because I think the issues are going to be clearly defined. If you want the government to be far more involved in your life, if you want your taxes to go up, if you want the government to be more involved in everything from health care to the ownership of self-protection in the form of a firearm, then you're going to love the Democrats. And if you believe that a sunburn from climate change is a greater threat to your future than is a beheading from ISIS, the Democrats, they're your team. Some of us would like to believe that the greatest threats we face are threats, first of all, to our very existence by making ridiculous deals with the Iranians like this administration has just done, and by misjudging every single foreign engagement we've had. We've blown it with the Russians, misjudged what was going on in Yemen, misjudged the Egyptian situation, totally botched it in Libya, had no clue what was really going on in Syria, thought that ISIS was a JV team before it turned out they were a little better than that, pulled out of Iraq before we had a clear understanding of what we were leaving behind, turning it into a mess, never keeping our agreements with the Kurds. I mean, the long laundry list. The only thing that we've attempted to do was to make sure that Americans can get cheap cigars and rum out of Cuba, and also somehow believe that the Iranians will, for the first time in the 36 years of their history under the Ayatollahs, actually keep an agreement. But we know that they not only haven't, they have no intention of it. None. We're living in a very dangerous world today. And that world has been made more dangerous by the last 7 years of President Obama. And the only thing that I was finding amazing was that it seemed like that everybody but Jim Webb on that stage was determined that if they become president, they will steer the ship even further left than Obama has for the past 7 years. I really thought that as they kept moving left to the stage, they would eventually all fall off, and only Jim Webb would be left standing there to make any sense whatsoever. And if it weren't enough for the challenges that we face on a global scale, I don't think I have to convince you that some of the things that are happening right here in our own economy are not exactly stellar. I mean, I hear people, maybe the Wall Street to Washington axis of power, and it's one of the frustrations, quite frankly, I have with our own Republicans, is that they tend to be so subservient to the donor class in Washington and out of Wall Street that they want all of us to just be globalist. Well, I'm an American. I'm an American first. I want Americans to win. I want Americans to have jobs. It's not enough that a handful of people at the very top of the food chain are getting wealthy. I want people in Iowa and Arkansas and the rest of the country to be able to go to work, have a good job, be able to bring a paycheck home to their families, and be able to build a life in America for their kids and their grandkids. And we are losing that in this country. And let me give you an example of how I could just say to you the symptoms. Did you know that 6 out of the 10 richest counties in all of the United States surround the Beltway of Washington, D.C.? Think about that for a minute. 6 out of 10 of the richest counties in the entire country, Washington, D.C. Beltway. Why is that? Why is it was the only real estate market in the nation that didn't have a downturn during the housing collapse of 2007 through 2009? Why is that? Because they can always write the rules to make things good for themselves, even if it is a gut punch to people in your neighborhood. 5 million Americans lost their homes. We had 5 million people lose manufacturing jobs just since the year 2000. 60,000 manufacturing plants in this country have closed since the year 2000. That means a lot of people lost good jobs. And everywhere I go, I talk to people who now work in 2 and 3 jobs and make less money than they used to make for the one decent job they once had. People whose jobs have been shipped to Mexico or to China. And one of the reasons that I believe we've got to make some drastic changes in the way that we approach the economy is because so far all I hear is people wanting to tweak it a little bit, tinker with the tax code. I think we need something bolder than a tweak. The tax code is killing this country with excessive taxation and regulation. And what it means is that if you've got a high-priced lobbyist in Washington working for you, helping to create those 6 out of the 10 richest counties, you're probably going to be okay because you can move your capital all over the world and you'll be able to shield it and shelter it. But if you're a small business person working somewhere like in Urbandale, then chances are you don't have the ability to do anything other than suffer through an incredibly punishing economy. Well, there's a better idea. It's scrap the entire tax code, all 77,000 pages of it. Heck, nobody understands that anyway, especially the government that created it, even your accountant who's trying to figure it out for you. Scrap the whole thing. Unplug the IRS completely. Get rid of it. Deflate it. Do more than find Lois Lerner's emails. Send her to the big house, because that's what would happen to you if you lost all your records. And stop the IRS. Pass the fair tax, which means we pay tax at the point of consumption. We no longer are taxed on income, whether it's corporate or individual. No longer taxed on the money that you save. No longer taxed on the inheritance that you receive. No longer taxed on capital gains or on dividends. No longer taxed at your payroll, which means, by the way, you want to fix illegal immigration? Take away the economic incentive to be illegal. And don't just take it away from the illegal immigrant. Take it away from the employer. You see, one of the reasons we never... Does this ever make you wonder how come it is that the Republican hierarchy in Washington keep pushing to keep illegal immigration going on and not to really deal with it in a tough way? I'll tell you why. Because there are a lot of people who are making a lot of money off of illegal immigrants. That's why. It's an exploitation of the illegals. Because if you hire an illegal, guess what? You're not paying in your portion of the payroll tax. And you're paying undercut wages, which brings all the wages of American workers down. And the result is there is an economic incentive not only to the employee, there is an economic incentive to the employer if you're practicing illegal immigration. So under the fair tax, guess what happens? You equalize and levelize the entire playing field. You take away the economic advantage to those who are living illegally. And by the way, last Saturday I was in San Diego. Former Congressman Duncan Hunter, who is one of my dear friends, we met when he ran against me 8 years ago. And he pulled out of the race. He endorsed me. He's still with me. One of my key advisors on military and national security issues. And Duncan Hunter, when he was congressman in the San Diego area, wanted to prove that a good fence actually does make good neighbors. Right there at the San Diego border, where Tijuana and San Diego meet, there used to be 480,000 apprehensions a year of illegals. They built a double wall in that 12-mile corridor, and those apprehensions went down to 30,000. A 95% decrease in illegal apprehensions. Folks, I know people say, well, we don't need a fence. A fence won't work. A fence does work. It has to be the kind of fence that was built there. It's a double fence. It's not perfect. But a double fence plus personnel, plus the electronic monitoring, means that we actually would do something that a country has to do to be free and to be a country. Secure its own borders. This has to be done. And I suggest to you, in fact, I pledge to you, it will be done within the first year of my presidency. And when people say, well, that's for the bold, I'm going to tell you something. 73 years ago, we built a road between British Columbia and Alaska. It's a 1,700-mile road, and we did it in less than a year, and that's under Arctic conditions. Now, folks, I know how cold it gets here in Iowa in the winter. It's stinking cold up here in the winter. Why the caucuses were in the winter in Iowa, I have no idea. I think August would be a great time to have the first in the nation caucus. Do it, when it's not 300 below zero. My southern blood never gets acclimated up here. How you guys do with it, I don't know. I just wear lots of coats and clothing and stay inside as much as possible. But I'm telling you, if you can build a 1,700-mile road with the engineering capability of 73 years ago and do that in less than a year, please do not tell me that if we wanted to, we could build a secure fence, a border, that would protect this nation and protect the exploitation of people who are being treated in many ways like something akin to slaves. We've got to make a better country. For your kids, for mine, for my grandkids, and for yours. Look, I hear a lot of people say, you've got to have a fight. Folks, there's never been a fight like the one I had to get just to be able to be elected in Arkansas against the Clinton political machine. You can't imagine. And then after I get there, I inherited the most lopsided legislature in the entire country, which most people don't know. I hear people talk about, we have a lot of Democrats in our state. You didn't have as many as we did. I don't care whether you're from Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Vermont, Maine, California. I would love to have had as many Republicans in my legislature as those guys had. My legislature was 89 Democrats in the House to 11 Republicans. 31 Democrats in the Senate to 4 Republicans. And about half those Republicans were suspect. I wasn't real sure about that. You want to talk about a fight? I also can tell you about how to be effective in leading and accomplishing. Your next president had better be able not only to win the battle to get there, but once there, know how to govern. This is not a job that's entry level. This is not a job a person walks into and says, well, I've never done anything like this before, but I'm sure I can learn while I'm here. We're talking about the presidency. And a person had better be prepared from day one to walk in and to lead and to govern. Folks, I could burn the whole thing down. I burned down a lot of corruption in Arkansas. I went after the one-party corrupted mess that I inherited, and we sent about 17 elected officials to the courthouse for indictment and to the big house after being sentenced. We cleaned out a lot of corruption. We didn't get it all because, quite frankly, the prosecutors were overwhelmed and they couldn't handle it all. There were a lot of people that they had evidence on that they never prosecuted, never even went after. But the word got out and some of the big fish went to the frying pan, and the result was we stopped a lot of the hideous kind of corruption that had been built up for generations in my state. We've got to do that in Washington. We have to stop the corruption that has made it impossible for the average American to be able to look forward and say, our country's going to get better. And I believe you better have somebody who has fought that kind of corruption in the halls of government, because if you've never faced it, you have no idea what a buzzsaw you're walking into. But I'm going to tell you this, we burn down the things that are rotten to the core, and we build up this country so that your kids and grandkids have a better America than even the one you have. A 12-year-old with a can of gas and a book of matches can burn the whole thing down. But somebody with some skill had better be employed to build it up so you leave something behind. I don't want to walk my grandkids through the charred remains of a once great country called America and say, here you go. I want to walk them up to the border of the greatest country on the face of God's earth and say it's stronger, it's better, and it's more ready than it's ever been. And I believe that's what you want for your grandkids as well. Or else you probably wouldn't be here, no matter how good the breakfast is. All right, let me take some questions from you guys. I want to see. Yes, sir. Is this a good one? A good question? Me too.
What do you think about Iran testifying about
The question is about the Iranians. Absolutely. The question is about the Iranians firing a long-range missile, something they're not supposed to have, something they're not supposed to even be able to obtain. They already have it. They're already firing it off. And as the gentleman pointed out, the ink hasn't even been completely dry, hadn't even been fully signed. This is a country that didn't wait until the agreement is finalized before they begin to violate it. I mean, one of the things we've got to do is to put some serious missile defense systems in Kuwait. And that has to be urgent because, quite frankly, it's the one place, and all the military people with whom I speak tell me that you're going to have to be able to take those missiles coming out of Iran out long before they get fully to their trajectory en route, because at that point they're going to be very hard to be able to take down. The discriminating power of taking one down is going to be very difficult. And the natural place, topographically and geographically, is Kuwait. But that means we're going to have to not only use existing missile systems, but we're going to have to develop some new ones. By the way, we're going to spend a lot of money in the future to defend ourselves and to defend the rest of the Middle East from turning into an inferno because of this ridiculously foolish, foolhardy deal that the President and John Kerry have made. You got a follow-up?
Yes.
Okay.
In 2009, John Kerry brought it Gus Mann was John Kerry
There are a lot of cozy relationships that go on in the world of politics, and I wasn't invited to the wedding, so I couldn't speak to any more of the details of it. Didn't even get an invitation to send him a gift, which I wouldn't have. Yes, sir.
Last night you stated that America has a sin problem, not a skin problem. Why do you think the liberals are upset about that? It makes no sense to me. You're right on.
The question is, the liberals went nuts last night, well, over several things, but one of them when I said that the world has a sin problem, not a skin problem. My comment was that racism is ultimately an issue of sin. If a person thinks he or she is better than another, that's not just a race issue, that's something that goes to the core of our basic sin nature. Now, I realize that even bringing up such a topic as a sin nature is incredibly politically incorrect. I understand that. I know that we're not supposed to discuss such things. We're supposed to just say we're all wonderful, good, and decent, and left to ourselves, we'd all create a utopia. And why haven't we? because we have a sin nature. Excuse me, hate to offend anybody, but let me just say this. If you don't think we do have a basic sin nature, it doesn't mean we're all mass murderers. It just means that we have a basic natural inclination to think of ourselves first. From the time we're a baby crying in the crib, it doesn't matter that mother hasn't had 2 hours sleep. We cry anyway because we want her now. I mean, this is what our sin nature is all about. It's like me first. And by the way, if you don't think you have that, let me ask you this. Next time you get a photo in the mail that's a group photo from your class reunion and you open it up, whose image do you look for first? And how do you judge whether it was a good picture? If your eyes are closed, 150 classmates can look great, and you'll look and say, that's terrible, we can't use that. Case closed. My point is racism cannot be eradicated by a government policy. It's a spiritual issue. It can only be dealt with when people begin to respect other people as equal human beings. And by the way, if I really believe that, you know how that translates into my life? If I start believing that every person is of equal worth and value, then I really believe that. And the Democrats on the stage last night were all fighting, especially Hillary. And she got her angriest when she was railing about the cuts to Planned Parenthood. And I'm thinking, you mean to tell me that the greatest threat to our country is not providing taxpayer money to a private organization that doesn't do one single mammogram, not one, but provides abortions. And after it aborts the unborn child, then sells the parts of the baby to the highest bidder, but yet tells the mother at one end of the hall, it's just a blob of tissue. But 5 minutes later at the other end of the hall is selling the parts and says, we've got a brain, we've got a liver, we've got some lungs, we've got a heart here. What do you want? Let's negotiate a price. My point being, it is a evil thing when we devalue somebody, whether it's an unborn child, whether it's an elderly person with advanced Alzheimer's. When we devalue someone, when we think that the captain of the football team is more valuable than the child with Down syndrome, we become a society that begins to elevate some and devalue others. God help us, because that means we are losing our very essence as a civilized people. Savages eat their own. Civilized people do not. Okay, I'm going to take this question back here and then I'll come up here. Yes, sir?
You said that undocumented immigrants should go to the back of the line, but the line should only be days or weeks long. Aren't quotas the reason that it's decades long, which you repeal quotas?
Well, I never believe the issue is about how many. And the question, if you didn't hear it, is should we repeal quotas about immigration? And part of the problem is to be legal, to come here legally, is an incredibly long and expensive process, and that needs to be reformed. I don't think there's any question. I've never heard anyone argue that point. But see, I believe that the big mistake we've made is we've argued about how many people we're going to let in. I think the bigger question is, why do they want to come? You see, here's what I'd want to do. I want to have a secure border. When they come knocking on the door, I want to say, hey, great, glad you're interested in America. Tell me why you want to come. And if they say, well, because I hear this is a place where people can be free. People can work hard, produce something, and they will be able to share those fruits of labor with their children and future generations. I want to come because I want to assimilate into your country. I really respect the Constitution that has a balance of power that doesn't give too much power to any one group of people, but balances it out and has checks and balances in it and accountability. And I really respect the fact that you guys want to be a strong nation, that you want to maintain your freedom by having the strongest, most powerful military in the history of mankind. And I want to learn your language, because I want to be able to function in your neighborhoods and in the workplace. So I'm coming here because I want to learn your language. And I want to pay taxes like everybody else, so I can contribute just like everyone else is doing. Person comes to the door and says that, I think we probably say, you know, I think you'll make a pretty good American. You'll be like a lot of the rest of us. and a lot of our ancestors who came for those reasons. Now if somebody comes knocking on the door and they say, hey, I hear you guys will let me have free health care, you'll educate my kids, you'll give me guaranteed income, you'll even let me vote, and you won't even make me change my language. I can press 2 and hear it in whatever language I want. I mean, I think we say, gosh, that's so interesting that you're wanting to come, but right now we just don't have any openings. Come back after you've read our Constitution and you've decided that you want to work with us in helping secure it, and we'll have another conversation. It's not how many, it's why do people want to come. If it's to help make America a great country and to make their families great, that kind of fits in with what we're all about. But if it's to be something other than that, I don't think we have any obligation to give away our country, our culture, our civilization, and our Constitution to people who don't respect it, honor it, and want to preserve it. It's as simple as that. It's not being mean. I don't, exercise any less discretion when somebody knocks at my door. If somebody comes to my door and knocks, I say, can I help you? And they say, yes, I'd like to go through your refrigerator, your pantry. I'd like to go through your closet. I'd like to maybe get in your garage and borrow one of your cars. Excuse me, do I know you? No, but I just thought maybe I could use this stuff. I'm going to ask you, what are you going to say to them? Yeah, come on in. I'm a chump, I'm an idiot. No, you're going to say, no thanks. You get my point, folks? We've got to use a little common sense. I know it's not very common in Washington, but it's pretty common where you live, and we need a little bit of it in Washington where people use their brains and take them to work and don't leave them on the bedstand every morning when they go to work in Congress. All right. Yes, ma'am. The question is about Joe Biden. Will he run? Could he beat Hillary? And did he wait until after the debate to see whether there was an opening? If he waited until after the debate, I'm thinking, Joe, you're really messed up, brother. Because there's really, everybody on that stage is so far over there to the left. I mean, that space is so occupied, I don't see where you fit in. So I don't think he ends up running. I could be wrong, but I think after last night, he's going to realize where's his slot? Where's his place? There just doesn't seem to be one. Could he beat Hillary? I doubt it. And the reason I say that, some of the people come up to me and say, you believe with all these scandals? Folks, the Clintons have had scandals their entire lives. Look, I know these folks. You don't think they had some scandals in Arkansas? Of course they did. They skate past every one of them. You put on clothes every day. They put on Teflon every day. I mean, it's amazing. Think about the scandals that you already know about and tell me, could anybody else have survived that? No. So this nonsense that, she's going to be caught up in scandals. Of course she is. She already is. That's exactly right. But the press will give her a big, warm, juicy kiss, and we will go on. We better be prepared for the battle of our lives, folks. And I think a lot of Republicans are just salivating, thinking, oh, I hope it's Hillary. Well, if it is, I think I'm the one person best prepared to challenge the Clinton political machine. But I will tell you this, anybody who thinks that's a cakewalk has never walked for that cake before. So anyway, I think the left was slobbering all over themselves last night. They really enjoyed the debate because they had people who were trying to out liberal each other, see how many things they could give away, and the rest of us are sitting there trying to add it up on our calculators and saying, oh boy, we certainly couldn't afford any of these guys getting elected. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, I'm in Paul. Yes, sir. I got 5 myself. Yeah.
We got a debt of over $18 billion.
Yes. Well, first of all, we can't fix it by raising taxes because that will actually hurt the economy more than it will help it. And we can't fix it by simply just simply cuts, although there needs to be some big cuts in government, because a lot of things that are being done at the federal level have no constitutional authority. They need to be pushed back to the states. One of the things that I guess I'm most adamant about, and it's because of my time as a lieutenant governor presiding over the state senate and then becoming governor in 10 and a half years, trying to balance and successfully balancing a budget every year. Biggest competition we face at the state level is not the other party. It's not the executive branch fights the legislative. Those are real fights, I want to tell you that. But it's the fact that we're fighting Washington every single day. Because they are completely ignoring the 10th Amendment. They're utterly taking over functions and roles that they do not have any legal authority to exercise in, whether it's education. There's no federal authority for that. A lot of the environmental laws that make it very difficult for people to carry out their businesses. I mean, I really don't believe that some 20-year-old in a concrete bunker in Washington knows more about how to farm than some guy living out in the countryside of Iowa. And you got some kid who's trying to tell him that his mud puddle is really a wetland. I mean, seriously? That ought to be regulated at the state level. And so, the way we deal with the debt ultimately is we grow the economy. And we grow the economy by stimulating it. I think that's why the fair tax works, is because the estimated $21 trillion of money that's parked offshore all over the world, imagine what that would do to goose the economy if it came back for investment. Just think about that a minute. What if people could put jobs, if we manufactured things again here? Why don't we do it now? Because every time we build something, the chair that you're sitting in, if we build that chair in America, 22% of the cost of that chair when it gets to the showroom floor, 22% of the cost, embedded taxes that nobody ever sees, but because we tax both capital and labor, that cost contains the taxes. Now, if we make that same chair in China, which means they probably stole the design, because they're really good at stealing intellectual property without paying for it. They steal the design, they go and manufacture it over there. They don't tax it when they build it, they don't tax it when they export it, and they don't tax it when they import it. And guess which chair ends up being cheaper and why we keep making things there instead of here? We innovate the iPhone here. It is American innovation and know-how that comes up with the concept, but when we get ready to actually produce it and manufacture it, where do we make it? We make it over there. Why don't we make it here? Well, we would if we had a tax system that didn't punish the people for making stuff here. We ought to make stuff in America. And that's one way to make sure that we could actually do it. Yes, sir?
So how do you answer the people that want to have a minimum wage increase?
No?
How do you solve that?
Well, you know, here once again is the liberals' idea that we ought to force the government to keep people at a minimum. See, I mean, to me, that's irrational. I mean, when people say, are you for the minimum wage? I'm thinking, no, I'm for the maximum wage. And here's what I would suggest. Rather than say the government is going to artificially force an employer to give you money that may not be anywhere near the market rate for your particular skill, why don't you tell me what you'd like to make? And if you don't like making $8 an hour, you can't live on that? Got it. Okay, what would you like to make? Well, I'd like to make 15. Well, here's two ways to do it. You can have the government force every employer to pay that minimum, which means a lot of employers just cut their workforce and go to automation. If you don't believe that, go to Europe and go to McDonald's. Nobody's at the counter. You go to a kiosk and you punch in what you want. You put in your credit card, and there's one person at the counter who just hands you the sack. They've eliminated all the jobs. So instead of saying, let's make the government force an employer to pay it, tell me, if you want to make 15, let's look at all the jobs that currently pay $15 an hour. But you know what? You can't really live on that either. I mean, you can't take care of a family of 4 on that. So would you like to make maybe $30 an hour? Oh, that'd be great. Well, instead of making the government the one who decides how much you make, because you really trust them? Seriously? Well, let's find all the jobs that pay 30. In fact, let's get some jobs that pay 40 or 50. Finished carpenters, plumbers, or contractors, ACE certified auto mechanics, brick masons, finished concrete guys. Let's find some jobs, some skills, some crafts. Get you trained in it. And guess what? You'll make $30 an hour, 35, 40, become a registered nurse. Make $45 an hour. Starting welders in North Dakota right now getting $85 an hour. Folks, if I don't win the presidency, I'm probably going to North Dakota. You know what, you're right, it is cold up there. They're going to have to pay me more than 85. Look, we've got to quit fighting this battle over how low can we get. It's rather how high can you reach. Let's challenge Americans for the maximum wage and not let ourselves get suckered in to the Democrats' nonsense about artificially raising the minimum. I mean, I would just say, hey, Democrats, you mean the best you can do for America is the minimum? This is your great goal? This is your economic plan? The minimum? Join the Republicans. We want to take you to the maximum. We want you to be the best you can be, not the least the government is willing to let you have. That's how we answer it. Okay? Yes, sir.
Seems to me one of the biggest things that's going to be a battle for us to win the election is to overcome this idea that anybody that's been an elected person in the Republican Party will pass that.
Yeah.
And how can we stop that movement when the people who want to split our party and
Well, it's a great question. The gentleman asked, how do we deal with the fact that it seems that if you have any qualifications at all in terms of you've ever been elected to something, you've effectively and consistently and faithfully actually governed, that you are completely unacceptable for the job. Look, I read the polls, I get it. I know that people are angry and upset. I'm angry and upset too. I'm probably more angry than most of you. I went to 37 states last year campaigning for Republicans because I thought that if we had the majorities in the Senate and the House, our guys would behave and they would go in there and get something done. You don't think I'm frustrated to go? And then I watch them. They don't do a thing about Obamacare, immigration. Then they turn around and give the president more power in the Iranian deal. Ask some senators why they voted on the bill that gave Obama more power to negotiate with a simple majority on the Iranian deal. I don't get that, and I sure don't get their falling all over themselves to help him pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is going to send more jobs overseas and less jobs here. I don't get that. So I'm upset. But don't blame me for what Washington has done. I've never lived there. Never got a paycheck there. Never put my head on a pillow in a place I call home there. But I know how to fight the battles that are there. And I'm going to just say this. I've respected every one of the Republicans who are running, and some of them have never held elective office before. If you think the presidency is such an easy job that the first thing to which a person should be elected is the White House, then you probably have a different perspective of what that job is about than I do. And I have a little bit of perspective because a governor actually has run a microcosm of the federal government. That's what you do. Every agency that exists at the federal level, you got it at the state level, and you understand the process of your job. Being an executive is different than being a legislator. Totally different mindset. One is product focused, the other is process focused. I worked with 135 legislators in my state General Assembly, and believe me, the way they look at an issue, totally different than the way that I did as the chief executive. Now, I would say this. If you think the country can withstand someone going in and learning on the job, then the next time you get on an airplane, look up in the left seat of the cockpit and ask, has this person ever flown the plane before? And if they say, no, he's never been in the cockpit before, but he's played a lot of video games, and I think he can do it. You okay with that? If the doctor says you're going to have a tumor removed and you're going to need surgery in the morning, and you roll in and you say, Doc, have you ever done this operation before? No, actually, I've never been to medical school, but I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. If you're okay with that, then you'll be fine with someone who has never governed. But I just believe that this job is going to be a little more complicated. And forgive me if that offends anybody. But folks, let's apply the same standard to electing a president that you would apply to hiring someone to run your business, or for that matter, to babysit your kids. I mean, I'm being serious. Would you say, come babysit my kids? Have you ever been around kids? Never in my life. No idea. You know how to change a diaper? Never done it. I mean, I'm just saying, this would be the first time in American history, the first time in world history, that we made the criteria for being selected for a job and being hired to proving and pointing out again and again that we have zero experience and preparation for that job. I don't understand why we would think that's a good idea. Now, you can argue with me and tell me it's a great idea. feel free to do so. Okay, we got time for what, one more, two more? One or two more, one or two, depends on how. Yes, ma'am, right over here. We could salute you today, couldn't we? Hi.
I'm practicing American as well. So,
Good.
I am 100% with you about the thoughts on immigration, and I applaud you for passing it the way that you have. But my question is this. I have great respect for the families that are working 2 and 3 jobs to
Yeah.
get feet. But on the other side of it, I also see lots of jobs posted, particularly labor jobs, that we can't find people to even apply, let alone take the jobs. So if we take away that immigration, help me understand what we're going to do about those positions.
Listen, that is a great question. I hope you heard it, because it's really at the heart of one of the reasons we're in economic trouble, and one of the reasons we do import so much labor. How are we going to deal with the fact that you've got a lot of jobs that nobody wants to take, particularly if they're just really hard work labor jobs? Well, let me tell you, the contractor that built our house had a little plaque on the back of his hard hat. It kind of says it all. It's really the answer. It says this. It says it ought to be at least as hard to get welfare as it is to get a building permit. Now, that frankly kind of sums it up. In fact, if you've ever been in a building site, I'll tell you what you'll find if you talk to the contractor. Here's what he'll tell you. He'll advertise for people he needs to come work. And they'll come up and say, hey, you got any work? Yeah, I sure do. Can you start Monday? Well, I can't start Monday. I got 4 more weeks of unemployment. When that runs out, I'll start in 4 weeks. Scratch that name off the list. When you pay people to not work for 99 weeks, they're not going to work for 99 weeks. There's got to be a system of accountability where if you're going to get benefits, you've got to do work. And if you don't take a job that's available, then we'll find you one. I mean, there's got to be some kind of sense of personal responsibility. If people get in the habit of taking something for nothing, they will spend a lifetime taking something for nothing. And I know that sounds harsh, but I want to tell you something. When I was governor, we reformed welfare. And we did it by making people accountable. You didn't get lifetime benefits. You had limited time. And if you weren't either working or being trained to go to work in a specific job, then you were running up the clock and your benefits were going away. And guess what people said to us? They actually came in and said this to our offices. They would come in and they'd say, I guess the gig is up. Find me a job, because I realize you're not going to keep paying me for doing nothing. I'm just telling you that's what happened. So we took 50% of the people who were on welfare and got them jobs. Some people, of course, can't work because they are physically disabled. They just can't do it. I understand that. None of us here are suggesting that we're cruel, because we're not. We're a good country. We're going to treat people right and fair. But people who can work should. Simple as that. And if they don't, they shouldn't get benefits from the rest of us who are out there busting our backsides every day trying to put bread on our table. This isn't about being cruel. This is about being responsible and building a great country, which you can't do if some people are working not only for their family, but working for people who just didn't want to get out of bed today. You just can't have a great country like that. Final question right here. Yes.
I'm from a farm girl. I'd like to know your position on use of eminent domain.
Great question. Use of eminent domain. Look, the government cannot take away. Private property is one of the most fundamental, unique aspects of being an American. The ownership of private property. And if the government wants to take property, first of all, it can only even consider that if it's for a public use. If they want to build a shopping center or take away and make it so that it's good for some industrial plant, no, they can't do that. It has to be public. And even then, there has to be just compensation in every attempt to make sure that there's no just taking of land without a true, absolute need and an absolute payment of fair market value. But eminent domain has been abused horribly in this country, and especially when private developers have been able to get government entities to use the power, this really police power of eminent domain, to take away people's lands. I mean, nothing is more sacred in this country than the idea that you can own property. You can own something. You can't own your own house in China. You can lease it, but you can't own it. fact that you can own your property, develop it, take care of it, pass it on to the next generation. It's one of the most important ways that we've prospered as a country. And I'm getting all the signs from our folks that say we're done, so I want to say to you, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. One final word. When the caucuses come up in February, I would love to have your vote at the caucus. And if you will caucus for me, as so many did in 2008, and I hold the record of having the most votes in an Iowa caucus in the history of the caucuses, which I thought was pretty cool. But I don't assume anything. I just need you to go do it. If you will, please, I don't care how harsh the weather is in February, please go out and caucus for me. If for some irrational, insane reason, you decide you're going to support someone else, I cannot fathom why. But if that's the case, I want to remind you that in February it is very cold, it is very and you really should stay home and watch this on TV instead. God bless you. Thank you.